Yo. Oh yeah. You know what that means. Alright, welcome to the part 4 of my big 4 of thrash metal discussion videos, in which I take a look at albums by Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax, and Megadeth. This time we will be reviewing the 4th albums from each respective band, and determining where they rank among the others, and what their place is in the history of heavy metal. Where do they stand, how do they hold up, all that stuff, and what they mean to me, But before we begin, there are 2 very important things that need to get out of the way. First off, my ranking of the sophomore albums from these bands has changed. When I made that video, which was part 2 in this little series, this is part 4, I ranked Spreading the Disease as second, before Peace Sells and Hell Awaits. I don't know what the hell I was thinking when I made that, but I definitely find the album by Anthrax to be inferior to what Megadeth and Slayer did for their second album. So Spreading the Disease should actually be in last place for sophomore albums. Again, I haven't drank alcohol in like 7 years, but I must have been drunk somehow. I can't believe I ranked Anthrax before Peace Sells and Hell Awaits. Oh my god. When it comes to the second albums by each band, I still maintain that Ride the Lightning is in first place. Don't get me wrong, I still love Spreading the Disease, but it's clearly not better than Peace Sells, which should have actually been in second place next to Metallica. My ranking in that one definitely was wrong. So now for the second important note. This is actually kind of minor, but in my last video, which was part 3, and looking at the third albums from the Big 4, I mistakenly referred to the Megadeth drummer as Scott Beeler instead of Chuck Beeler. I definitely know that his name is Chuck and not Scott, but this was just the equivalent of a typo. Perhaps I was talking way too fast. The only Scott in these bands is Scott Ian from Anthrax. So yes, the drummer that performed on So Far, So Good, So What is Chuck Beeler. Chuck. My bad. Yeah, I know who Chuck Beeler is. I misspoke. Alright, with that out of the way, let's cover one more thing before we get to the 4th Big 4 of thrash albums. And that's to recap my ranking of the first 3 albums from each band. So from the first 3 videos, if you haven't seen them. To quickly summarize, debut albums would go Kill 'Em All, then Show No Mercy, then Fistful of Metal, and then Killing Is My Business. That's really close between those. Between Killing Is My Business and Fistful of Metal, it's really close. Those kind of teeter-totter. Sometimes I prefer Killing Is My Business to Fistful of Metal. It's a very close one. The Megadeth record might be better than the Anthrax one. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and stand by that decision for now. So sophomore albums would rank as Ride the Lightning, then Peace Sells in second place, Peace Sells, then Hell Awaits, then Spreading the Disease. Anthrax is in last place for the second albums. So glad I corrected that one. And finally, third albums was Master of Puppets with Metallica in first place for the final time, then Rain and Blood, then Among the Living, and then So Far, So Good, So What. Alright, so those are my rankings for the first 3 albums from those bands. Check out the first 3 videos, part 1, 2, and 3, for more info on that. On to the 4th albums from the Big 4 of thrash. Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax, and Megadeth. The best album of the bunch is most definitely Rust in Peace by Megadeth. By far. Megadeth in first place, and finally breaking the pattern of Metallica always winning. Do I even need to explain why Rust in Peace is an iconic masterpiece that is nearly unparalleled to its metal peers? I will anyway. This recording is the finest hour from Dave Mustaine and Company. It's right up there with Peace Sells, which is, again, the second best Big 4 thrash sophomore album, next to Ride the Lightning. Sorry, I just had to reiterate that point. I can't stress that enough. Along with being one of the greatest thrash metal CDs ever, this is also the first Megadeth record to feature what is my favorite lineup from the band. We now have the legendary Marty Friedman on guitar, along with the ingenious Nick Menza on drums. Menza is sadly no longer with us. Megadeth's 2 greatest drummers are gone, the other being Gar Samuelson, from the first two albums. Gar Samuelson was great as well. Marty Friedman is easily my top favorite guitarist of all time, top 5. And I would even go so far as to say that he's probably by far the best axeman out of every guitar player out of these 4 bands that any of them have ever had. Yeah, that's right, I said it, and we'll probably stand by my bold statement there. Yeah, and just to clarify what I meant, yes, he's better than Hammond and Hetfield, better than King, Hanneman, and even Holt. He's better than Spitz, Ian, or any of the various Anthrax guitarists. And yeah, he's even better than every other guitar player Megadeth has had, although Chris Poland comes very close. Very close. Poland's awesome, too. And Mustaine, of course. And I would also say that Marty Friedman and Dave Mustaine make up the best guitar duo in not only the big 4 of thrash, but probably just about every thrash band, really. I mean, Alex Skolnick from Testament is likely my favorite thrash guitarist, but man, what Mustaine and Friedman accomplished together is nearly unbeatable. And this album's a testament to that. Those two are right up there with the likes of Tipton, Downing, Murray and Smith, and even Sherman and Denner, you know. Which I consider those like my top 3 favorite guitar duos. So, hell, Friedman and Mustaine might be my 4th favorite guitar duo. And so, yeah, perfect guitar duo. And in addition to have some of the best riffs and solos that he has ever performed, Dave Mustaine's vocals have also improved significantly here. Now, I think we all can agree that, you know, he was never a fantastic singer, but I really enjoy his voice here, and he had definitely gotten better compared to past material. Yeah, really gives some, puts his heart into it and gives some good emotion on, you know, especially songs like, you know, Holy Wars and whatnot. Yeah, and David Ellefson gives a solid bass performance as usual, and combined with Nick Minza's excellent drumming is highly memorable. So yeah, this record is almost too good to be true. You know, we've got highly accomplished solos that are impossible to play even by the most seasoned of guitarists, including myself, and awesome tunes like Holy Wars, The Punishment Due, Hangar 18, Take No Prisoners, Tornado of Souls, and sorry, and so many others. Just a classic in every sense of the word. Yeah, so yeah, with very technical and precise guitar playing that is nearly the driving force of the album, a mature style of songwriting, some passionate and competently performed percussive rhythms. This album is a staple in the thrash metal genre and easily the best of the fourth efforts from these 4 bands. Yeah, this one is honestly pretty high above the rest, too. But let's go ahead and look at the others now. Yeah, Rust in Peace. It rocks. Okay, now, for second place, it's kind of a close one between South of Heaven and A Justice for All. Both of these albums are my least favorite of the first 4 recordings by each band, especially when their respective third albums were so groundbreaking. These were kind of, you know, disappointing follow-ups when compared to what came right before. Oh, man, this is so hard, but I guess I'll go with South of Heaven by Slayer for second place. You know, again, it's so close, and I'll probably even change my mind later. But I guess that South beats Justice by like maybe 1%, if even that. I already changed my mind like 5 times before I made this video, so let's just go ahead and get this done with. Again, it's so close. Yeah, I'll probably change my mind, but you know, I actually did change my mind right before this recording too, a few times, and I switched these 2 out back and forth over and over. But you know what? Who cares? You know, it's not even that important. I just want to talk about why the albums are so great. So yeah, I'll probably change it right after this, but you know, whatever. They're just about tied for second place, really. You could really say that South of Heaven and Justice for All tied for second place. I don't know. But yeah, anyway, after the first 3 from each band, I found myself not caring quite as much. But anyway, yeah, South of Heaven by Slayer. It's my least favorite Slayer album of the first 5. Of the first 5 recordings, this one's like, I think, the weakest. Sandwiched in between 2 superior recordings, you know, Rain and Blood and Season of the Abyss. It's still really good, though. You know, I've actually reviewed this one already in its own individual video, so go ahead and check that out if you haven't already. For more info on my feelings towards this one, I guess I'll give a brief summary anyway. Yeah, the moment you put the CD in your player and you hear the hauntingly awesome intro to the title track, which is the first thing you hear, you know you're in for something special. South of Heaven isn't nearly as fast, heavy, or brutal as Rain and Blood, but I'm kind of glad they didn't just rehash that same style yet again. That would have been monotonous and formulaic. We don't want them to be too repetitive. It's a little slower and slightly more melodic, which I think fits the style and tone pretty well. It's still very good. Kerry King and Jeff Hanneman are an underrated pair of guitarists, in my opinion, constantly getting crap for their sloppy and unstructured solos that may consist of too much Ramy bar. But look at those awesome and highly creative riffs, man. There's so many of them. Surely that must count for something. Several memorable and catchy leads can be found here. And, I think those unique solos have become something of a signature for the band, a staple of their sound, if you will. I wouldn't have them any other way. Tom Araya's vocals were kind of starting to decline here. As this album and the next one after that, were kind of the bridge between when he truly was the voice of hell and, when he just did generic yelling. So, and his bass playing was never really anything all that special either, but it gets the job done. Dave Lombardo is my favorite drummer, as I've already said many times. He shines here as usual. His beats are still breathtaking, to say the least. South of Heaven is far from the definitive Slayer record, but you really can't go wrong with great tracks like the title song, Silent Scream, Behind the Crooked Cross, Mandatory Suicide, Ghost of War, and even a killer cover of Judas Priest's Dissident Aggressor. So yeah, this one can't compete with what came before or what came directly after, but it's still a solid entry in Slayer's discography. And again, for more info, check out my individual review. It was one of the earliest videos I made on here. South of Heaven by Slayer. Alright, so yeah, the next one's obviously Metallica, third, I guess, but I really consider this and South of Heaven about the same. They're pretty much equal. They're on the same level, so I guess you could just say they're tied for second. I don't know, however you want to say it. I never really considered Injustice for All like a truly spectacular album or one of my favorites, but it is the fourth best of anything Metallica's ever done, next to the holy trinity that is their first three magnificent albums. It's definitely better than what came after, but it's still the beginning of the end for Metallica. Their last true metal album, in my opinion. It was kind of a prelude to the highly commercial and radio-friendly Black album that came next, and you could certainly see it coming when listening to Justice. We got some great tracks like Blackened, One, Harvester of Sorrow, and a few others, but it's just such a letdown at their first three that I found this kind of depressing to listen to. Maybe I'm being a little bit unfair, but I do still spin this record every once in a while, and like I said earlier, it's probably the last good thing they ever did, but it's still not bad. After the great Cliff Burton died, we now have Jason Newsted replacing him on bass, and while he does a commendable and decent job, it's just not the same. I like Jason, but for some stupid reason, James and Lars decided to turn down the bass track and almost mix his bass playing out of the final recording entirely. The bass is practically inaudible, and the reason was apparently that James and Lars were hazing their new member and disliked him for no reason other than he was not Cliff. Just because he's not Cliff. WTF, man. I guess they didn't give a damn about the listeners who wanted to hear some freaking bass when they listened to this album. Come on. This kind of makes me think that they didn't care when it came to this one. The band truly did die with Burton. Seriously, mixing out the bass just because of hazing? What a crock. I don't blame Jason for wanting to leave the band. They never treated him right. Anyway, back to Injustice for All. Lars Ulrich's drumming isn't bad here, but he was clearly running out of ideas and seemed so much less inspired. He's never been a fantastic drummer. This is the beginning of the end for James Hetfield as well, who gave his final metal-sounding vocal performance. I honestly wouldn't have cared if they'd gotten a different vocalist after this album. Hell, Newsted could have dame it. He's got an awesome metal voice, as evidenced by him singing lead during some of their live shows. He owns those classic songs, which James clearly couldn't sing anymore. Kirk Hammett still has some memorable solos and riffs for what is probably the final time. His overuse of the wah-wah pedal never really bothered me too much, and I think he's a pretty underrated guitarist, considering, overall. But I think, Metallica made the mistake of loading all their songs with as many great riffs as possible that they quickly ran out of ideas for riffs. All of them were already used, at least compared to their earlier material. Alright, it might sound like I hate this album, that I sounded very critical of it, but on the contrary, it's actually a good record, just such a letdown after listening to their incredible first three, and also knowing what it would lead to. I still heavily recommend this. Nonetheless, it is Metallica, classic Metallica, and it's definitely the one Metallica album you have to hear if you are a fan of Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, and Master of Puppets, and you're going to listen to one other album, it would be this one. But it is truly their last hurrah. And Justice for All by Metallica. Alright, last place, as per usual, is State of Euphoria by Anthrax. And that's where they belong to my sophomore video, which again, I don't know what I was thinking. Peace Cells and Hell Awaits are better. This one was in last. Spreading the Disease was in last place. Alright, so yeah. Similar to the story of a Slayer, Anthrax's fourth album is easily my least favorite of the first five. Persistence of Time, which came next, was certainly an improvement in my opinion. This is definitely the low point of the Belladonna-fronted albums. Joey Belladonna is my favorite singer out of all these bands, and I still maintain that Anthrax has had the best vocals of the big four, despite being the only band in that group to ever change singers. However, having the best vocals doesn't really help the fact that Anthrax does have my least favorite guitar playing of the big four, lead guitar playing. You know, I still love Dan Spitz and Scott Ian, and I find Dan Spitz kind of underrated. You know, but he isn't quite on the same level as the other players. You know, and yeah, rhythm guitarist and founder Scott Ian, of course, bassist Frank Bello, and drummer Charlie Benante are all fine here. You know, they're all on their game, but I think they still could have done better. You know. Simpler riffs and strong song structures are abundant here. Yeah, so you'll notice that for sure. You know, it isn't downright terrible by any means, but it's most definitely the worst of the fourth albums from the big four thrash, and definitely not one of the better releases by this band. But now, there's some good songs here, you know, Be All, End All, Make Me Laugh, Now It's Dark, and even a cover version of Trust's Antisocial. And Belladonna really shines on Who Cares Wins, Out of Sight, Out of Mind, really putting his heart into his performance and salvaging what are otherwise unimpressive songs. Joey Belladonna, you know, he really made this album sound better than it actually is. It is too bad that it took Scott Ian so long to figure out how important Joey's voice was to the band. It had to release so much crap before they finally got him back. But yeah, I still don't find myself listening to State of Euphoria very often when I'm in the mood for Scott Ian and company. This is far from the first CD I reach for when I want to hear Anthrax, but I still prefer it to the John Bush-fronted albums, which I'm sorry to say just aren't my cup of tea. I know they have their fans, but they don't sound like thrash metal at all to me. They're more like a grungy, alternative, groove metal Pantera clone, you know? But yeah, I prefer this to the John Bush era material, but that's not really saying much, because I wasn't really a fan of that period. It's still good, just not, it doesn't sound like Anthrax to me. It's okay. Yeah, but this is their weakest 80s album, and it kind of has a more gloomy and serious tone when compared to the others, which I don't think works as well for Anthrax. It doesn't fit their band. You know, it's still not boring, however, but more on that later. Some of their later stuff certainly is. Yeah. But anyway, we're nowhere near the completely awful territory yet, but this is definitely a precursor to that period. I'd still say to check this one out if you're a fan of the band and have already listened to, you know, all the other better recordings. You know, just check it out. State of Euphoria by Anthrax. Alright, well, I think that just about covers it. You know, I will always love all these bands, despite all of them losing their consistency and putting out a dud every now and then. And it pains me that we're only on part 4, and they're already kind of nearing the decline. But fortunately, these albums are still highly listenable and nowhere near the low point of each band's career. And especially with Rust in Peace, as that album freaking rules. Hell yeah, dude. If you have the urge to listen to any of these albums or bands after watching this video, definitely start with that one. And you will not be disappointed. Yeah, there's our man, Vic Rattlehead, the second coolest mascot next to Iron Maiden's Eddie. Hell yeah, Rust in Peace. This record rules. And yeah, once again, for sophomore albums, for the second release by each band, it goes Ride the Lightning, then Peace Sells, then Hell Awaits, then Spreading the Disease. Anthrax is last. So if you watch that video of their second albums, know that I've messed up really bad, and I should have put Spreading the Disease in the last place. It's still a good album, but yeah, Peace Sells and Hell Awaits are way better. I mean, come on, what was I thinking? What was I thinking? A lot of people corrected me on that in the comments, and now I certainly agree with you. Again, I wasn't thinking clearly. So yeah, I just had to reiterate that point yet again. Alright guys, I'm Hellhound. Thank you for watching my video, and I guess next time we'll tackle the 5th albums from these bands. That should be interesting, as that was kind of when they're, you know, starting to be not as good. I already reviewed Countdown to Extinction, so I guess I'll just summarize that again. But hi guys, hope you enjoyed Big 4 Thrash Metal. Later.